actual podium. Yeah, yes. Well, thank you very much. Good to see all of you. I was reminded when Mr. Sumner got up and said, "Good afternoon," and you all, in the Bahamian tradition, responded, "Good afternoon," I think it was the Secretary General of the ITU who came here. And he said this is the first country that he'd actually been to where, when he got up and said, "Good afternoon" to the audience, everybody responds by saying, "Good afternoon." And he just looked completely shocked because he says, where does anybody do that? But so, welcome to the Bahamas. And thank you all for inviting me here to lunch. And Dorothy, good to see you. I'm glad you're back. And I heard that you organized this whole thing just for me. And so thank you and blessings, and continue to do well, and hope to see you again many, many more times. To the Dean and Mrs. Gibson, and to all of you, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to have been asked to say these few words at this luncheon today, and to thank all of you for the work which you do on behalf of your countries in the Bahamas. It is not an easy job for people to understand what you do. They think that you're all just attending cocktail parties every day and having a great deal of fun, which reminded me of Condi Rice, the former Secretary of State of the United States, and we were trying to arrange a meeting between the CARICOM side and the United States side. And the question was, where in the month of February should the meeting take place? Should it be Washington, D.C., or should it be Nassau, the Bahamas? And she thought about it for a while, and she said, there's no way we're having a meeting in Washington in February. So the meeting ended up being here. So was it George Bush, when he was sending his ambassador out to the Bahamas, and all they said was, have a great time playing golf for the rest of your term, and gave him a putter. But there are serious things which go on here in the Bahamas. And last week you saw an example of how, from time to time, the Bahamas gets on the international stage. And I think the diplomats who happen to be resident here are often surprised at the people they run into here. Some of the public officials in their own governments that they would never get to meet happen to end up here. So we are sometimes on the world stage. And last week was one such example, where our Prime Minister, who is now chair of CARICOM, it's a rotating chairmanship, and we are chair for the next 6 months until the 4th of July of this year. And strangely enough, something popped up in my WhatsApp chat this morning from the Nation News in Barbados. And it's me giving a speech in Barbados in 2016 when we were last giving up the chairmanship of CARICOM. Prime Minister Christie was then the chair. And I was giving some speech on his behalf. I can't figure out how it suddenly popped up in my feed this morning. But so we've been down this route before. Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham was once chair, Prime Minister Christie, and now Prime Minister Davis. And I gave that little bit of history because what I find is that we are, all of us in this business of diplomats, exceptional people, in that we parse all of the things that happen on the international stage, watch what some president says or what the minister says, but most people are getting on with their lives every day, and they don't follow these things. And so it's easy for them to think it's just a cocktail party that you're doing. But I say it because our own people are not quite understanding or don't remember why, for example, we're engaged in what is happening in Haiti. And so I look at the social media feeds, and their response is, we can't solve the problems in Haiti. Why is this small country going down there thinking that they can solve the problems in Haiti? And I've had even to tell my own colleagues, the idea is not to solve the problems, because life is a continuation. The idea is to manage our relationships for the benefit of all of our countries. And this is a continuing conversation and a continuing journey. It's not a finite journey. It's not something that you decide, we're going to fix this problem and the problem is fixed. It's not fixed because life is an evolving thing. It's a dynamic exercise. And many of our own folks don't remember that we've been down this road before. So last week, our colleagues from around the region and from the United States and Canada agreed to do two things coming out of the CARICOM conference. One is to have a kind of high-profile security-type meeting with the officials in Haiti within days, and that's going to be on Monday. There'll be a group flying from this country, and the Jamaican Prime Minister will fly in directly from Jamaica to meet with the officials in Haiti, including the Prime Minister and his colleagues, but most importantly, to send a signal to the Haitian National Police that they have the support of the international community, and if not the international community across the world, certainly in the hemisphere, they have the support to carry out the job of ensuring that there is security in Haiti to make it possible ultimately for there to be elections, which the hemisphere wants to have, free and fair elections, which would then put in place a government which would be representative of the people of Haiti, and hopefully there will be progress going forward. And the second thing they decided was that we need to meet the stakeholders in Haiti from all sides. So there is a process which was begun by the Prime Minister in December, where he signed on to a group of people who are opposition figures and civil society, including the business community, and they signed on to a process. And the question is, where does this group meet to be able to talk about how do we plot a future for Haiti to solve these problems? And so the Bahamas offered to be the forum for that place. Jamaica also offered, and ultimately it was decided Kingston is where that meeting is going to take place, and hopefully that will happen in a couple of weeks. Now, we've been down this road before, because when P.J. Patterson, the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, was Prime Minister, he hosted a similar meeting here in the Bahamas at what is now Breezes. And the meeting took place over 24 hours or 48 hours. We flew in, the Bahamas government, flew in representatives of civil society and the Haitian government to Nassau, and they met over 2 days to discuss a way forward for resolving the issues. So it's happened before. It's not new. And we're back in some senses to where we were before. But it brings out the point I'm trying to say, is that these are continuous processes. They're ebbs and flows. You never actually solve problems ultimately. You do the best you can while you're on the public stage in increments to try and manage these problems for the betterment of our countries. And that's what our job is. And every day our job is to talk to one another and discuss and say, what do you think we ought to be doing here? How do you think we can improve this? How can this become better? And hopefully by minds meeting together, we come to some solutions which will make it better for the peoples in our various countries. And this dialogue that takes place includes not only in the CARICOM context the independent countries, but also the dependent countries. So, for example, the Prime Minister said in his opening statement at the CARICOM meeting that we have a special link to 3 of the territories that are not independent. One is the British Virgin Islands, the other is the Turks and Caicos Islands, and the other is Bermuda. And And I mention that because there's been a lot of public controversy about the fact that the Prime Minister went to Bermuda and why did he go. And I've said to people, well, if you've been watching this, we've been at this for 30 years. Lyndon Pindling, who was the founding Prime Minister of our country, went to school with Lois Brown Evans, who was one of the founding members of the governing party in Bermuda. They both went to the University of London. And when she went back home, he came back home and joined the movement here. And she decided to, with her colleagues, to form a political party, which they happened to call Progressive Labour Party. And they had the same PLP all the way in Bermuda. And there is the opposition party in Bermuda was the United Bermuda Party, which we had the United Bahamian Party. So that's how that all got started. And we've been at this project from our political party. We've been at this project for decades, trying to develop this relationship with the people of Bermuda and with the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands. You know, the Bahamas did not sign on to the single market and economy. When we were all colonies, there was in fact a single market economy because when the British ran everything, you know, the Barbadians came here, the Jamaicans came here, Turks and Caicos came here. It's just free labor back and forth. I say, when we're arguing about immigration, if you look at the Pindling cabinet, Mr. Pindling himself, Sir Lyndon his father was Jamaican. Alfred Maycock, a member of his cabinet, his father was Barbadian. Sir Clement Maynard, his father was also from the Caribbean, Mrs. Gibson's father. Jeff Thompson's father was from Barbados. Arthur Folks' mother was Haitian. So immigration helped to feed the independence project that we're now engaged in, and it's made our country richer. So Grand Bahama, start from Abaco. They were cutting pine in Abaco. A man named Wallace Groves, cutting pine in Abaco. And when the pine got exhausted in Abaco, moved to Grand Bahama to cut the pine in Grand Bahama. And then, when the pine got exhausted in Grand Bahama, he decided I'd make something called Freeport. And so how do you build Freeport? You needed labor. He needed labor to cut the pine in Abaco, cut the pine in Grand Bahama. Where did the labor come from? Turks and Caicos Islands. So if you go to 8 Mile Rock, you go to Grand Bahama, there are probably more Turks and Caicos Islanders in Grand Bahama than there are in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And I see the Turks have now made it easier for them to claim by expanding the range of people who can actually claim patriality to the Turks and Caicos Islands. And so we've also latterly developed an interest in relationship with the people of the British Virgin Islands. And we have talked about this project about the internal democracy of these countries to ensure that to the extent that they are interested in self-determination, that their rights are protected and looked after within the CARICOM context. So those are some of the things we're engaged in, and we're hoping that we can bring our countrymen along across the region on a commitment to these projects. First, to democracy, and secondly, to specifically help and assist the people of Haiti, and to keep a watching brief on the dependent territories. The other issue, of course, which is front and center, is the question of climate change. Now, this again is one of these subjects which for most people I assume is just pie in the sky. People say, look, 50 years from now, I'm not going to be here anyway, so what's it to me? I need a contract now. I need a job now. My children don't have any food. What are you talking about climate change? But climate change, as our Prime Minister said, is for us existential. And it's a fancy word that simply means that the Prime Minister describes it as this: either we're going to end up as climate refugees or we're going to be in a watery grave, because 80% of the land in the Bahamas is within 3 meters of the sea. And so as the sea rises, the place will disappear. And this is a reality for some of the Pacific Islands already. They've started negotiations, because some of their islands have disappeared, with developed countries in their region to say, can we come and live in your place? Because our place is just disappearing. And we are fighting to see if we can, pardon the pun, turn back the tide on this issue. And so Prime Minister's been beating the bushes on this issue as an international spokesman and a hemispheric and regional spokesman on the question of climate change. And all of your countries have been engaged, I'm certain, at the various COP meetings, trying to see what contributions they can make to this. And it's a difficult issue because it's really expensive to deal with. And businessmen are saying, well, why should I cut into my profits when I can make so much money? I mean, the President of the United States has described the oil companies making so much money as a result of what's happened, the war in Ukraine. And people are exercised about this. And just reading the press over the last week or so, the fact is, it looks like you're doing more exploration for oil than ever since the whole climate change has happened, which seems quite ironic when you're trying to meet these targets by 2030. But, economics will dictate many of the results of these things. And so we have a job to do, one of moral suasion, largely for our voices. John Kerry, when he spoke here, said, our voices make a difference. And one of my favorite sayings comes from a movie which I quote all the time. People are probably sick of it, The Lion in Winter. And it says, if your voice is all you have, then you use your voice. Even if it shakes, use your voice. And that's what our Prime Minister is doing, using the voice of the country to say, hey, you have a moral obligation, and it makes sense economically as well for you to help us solve this problem. So lastly, what I would also like to say is the last time I spoke with you, particularly the honorary consuls, who have to interface with our public officials, and those who are resident ambassadors here who have to meet from time to time with the public service and deal with the arcane aspects of Bahamian bureaucracy. We had given certain undertakings at the Foreign Ministry to help smooth those relationships and to help those work better. I hope that since those conversations took place, that there's been, if only a marginal improvement in the fulfillment of those promises. Because we want to make sure that everyone who is here, who's your citizen, gets a fair opportunity to enjoy the place, certainly, but certainly if anything goes wrong, to make sure that it is quickly corrected and we do the best by them. Because we want the reputation of the country to be such that it is a good reputation. I often enjoy crossing borders, and a customs officer or an immigration officer will say, Bahamas, aha. And once I get that response, then I figure we're still doing a pretty good job. And that's what happens most times. I've never, crossing a border, gotten a complaint. People think it's a great place to be. And to go back to Condi Rice, what better place for us to be gathered in Graycliff than February in the Bahamas in the clear skies. So I once again thank all of you for coming to this lunch and putting it on. And I'm deeply grateful for the good relations we have with all of you, for the support of all of our international partners for our work, for taking the 400,000 of us seriously enough to actually come and be in the country and listen to me run on at lunch. And hopefully you'll report faithfully what I said to your capitals, and that you will tell them that you need an extension of your time here. So bless you all, and thank you very much for lunch.